Hi, my name's Lance Howard, and I'm a facilitator with Presos. Recently, I was battling negative self-talk that has caused me anxiety, depression, and a sense of hopelessness. And I was wondering what was next in this season of life. You may know the feeling of all the million thoughts that go on in your head, that you dare not have anyone else know. We go through these seasons of life, and oftentimes in the middle of the story, we have no idea what we are truly facing. But that is the case with any story, and especially good stories. All good stories go through this ugly middle, this space of facing a conflict that has to be solved. We all desire to live in a good story, but we do not desire or even dare to face the conflict that gets us to the other side of the story. So today's teaching is for anyone that finds themselves in the middle of a story and it does not make sense. And even if your current story or circumstance, hopefully this will allow you to frame your future story. So we're going to talk through negative self-talk. How do I get out of my toxic thinking and instead replace that toxic thinking with a truth that is transformational? So you'll know the story. A blind man, Bartimaeus, he was sitting by the road, and in his anticipation of seeing Jesus walk by, he was easily dismissed by the crowds. And so he began crying out even louder and louder and saying, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." And yet the crowd still continued to rebuke him and telling him to be silent. And Jesus called to him and said, the blind man began throwing off all his cloak and he sprang into action. And Jesus said, "What do you want me to do for you?" Jesus. So we're thinking, Jesus, what is that question really about? He's blind. What do you think he wants you to do? Okay, so let me slow down. This is not a theological unpacking or a teaching on this particular passage. I want you to stop and place yourself in this story as the blind man. Your heart desires something. Possibly you have been shut out by the enemy or the perceived enemy. But now it's your time to press in. So close your eyes and listen and ask Jesus, what do you want? This only works if you can begin to unpack and speak truth to the desires of your heart. But you see, Jesus already knows those desires, but there is something powerful about having to speak the truth verbally. Oftentimes we are held back from the potential that Jesus came to offer us life abundantly because we are not telling the stories that Jesus would desire for us to tell ourselves. So what do you want? In the process of speaking what you want, we need a process to clear up our muddy and toxic thinking and to articulate a truth that is transformational. Okay, so let's suppose for a minute the blind man knew what he wanted. But after years of being blind, he was faced with the opposition, the road, the crowds, being thrown aside. And so your answer is not going to be as obvious as the blind man. But nonetheless, your answer matters. So if you're going to follow Jesus with wild abandon and serve those in your current context, we have to face a similar circumstance and a similar set of questions for us to get to the place of saying what we want. And we have to unclutter our toxic way of thinking. Or even if you verbalize what you want, you will have to begin a process of living into the truth. So I'm going to teach on two quick things. It's called a pain and peace cycle. If you want to research more, it's called the restoration therapy model by Terry Hargrave. So it's the pain and peace cycle. The pain that we're going to talk through is how you feel, what you cope with, how you and others react, and then replacing that with the peace cycle of the truth, how you act, and how you and others respond out of that new way of thinking. So this is what it looks like for me on a very practical level. So let's suppose Jesus, once again, is asking me that question. What do you want? I want meaningful relationships with my coworkers. I want meaningful relationships with my spouse. I want meaningful relationships with my children. And the list could clearly go on. I think the further you get honest with yourself and your leader and your facilitators this month, the more meaningful this question is. So you begin saying, say what you feel. So I feel anxiety, and I feel the sin of self-protection. So that's what I feel in this pain cycle. So how I typically cope, I typically withdraw, and then therefore I avoid conflict, whether it's with coworkers or whether it's with my spouse. So then you have to say your truth. So I say to myself, the truth is there's freedom, and in that freedom there's courage. And so out of that I begin to say it was something different, this new truth and this new way of believing and thinking. So the actions I will take, I will have confidence to connect with my coworkers. I will have confidence to connect with my spouse. So you've got to go through the pain cycle. You've got to understand what it is you feel, how you cope, and then begin to unpack, replacing that with your truth. And in your truth, you've got to walk through that cycle in a way that brings you transformation. Just as Romans 12:2 says, you've transformed by the renewing of your mind. 2 Corinthians 10:5, and taking every thought captive and making it obedient to Christ. And finally, just a summary, I would say calm, confident, and connected. This will help you become a calm minister, pastor, leader, friend, coworker, spouse. It'll help you be confident in the way you interact with others. And more importantly, it will help you be connected to yourself, and it'll help you be connected to others. So blessings to you, and may you unpack the real truth behind what do you want.